Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for our monthly webinar, Exploring eBird and Bird ID for K-5. It is 7 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Just for your information, the webinar is being recorded, and this will be available on our YouTube channel in a day or so. And you will also receive an email after the webinar with all the links that we're sharing and also the YouTube video in case you want to go back. So thanks again for joining us. In case you're not familiar with Zoom, we're going to just do a few quick housekeeping things. The Zoom, when I'm sharing my screen, usually is full screen for you. And so we recommend exiting full screen, and you can do that either by hitting the escape button, or under your options for viewing, you should be able to exit full screen. And then we would like for you to, we're going to use the chat a lot, so we would like for you to open up your chat window, and when you exited full screen, you should be able to merge that to the screen and then be able to see everything that's happening in the chat as well. And I apologize, I have a very touchy mouse that seems to always want to go 2 slides forwards or backwards. So we are part of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and I want to read our land acknowledgement because Cornell is located in what's now called Ithaca, New York, and we are located on the traditional homelands of the Gayakono, the Cayuga Nation. The Gayakono are members of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, an alliance of 6 sovereign nations with a historic and contemporary presence on this land. The Confederacy precedes the establishment of Cornell University, New York State, and the United States of America. We acknowledge the painful history of the Gayakono dispossession and honor the ongoing connection of the Gayakono people, past and present, to these lands and waters. And while a land acknowledgement doesn't erase everything that has happened, we do like to start there. And you can see here from the picture, this is the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, our building. There's a visitor center there. And we are a nonprofit that's associated with Cornell University, and our mission is to interpret and conserve the Earth's biological diversity through research, education, and citizen science focused on birds. And tonight, my name is Susan Licker, and I will be doing most of the talking tonight, and I'm joined by Jen Fee, who's our K-12 program manager, and she's going to be answering questions and providing links in the chat window as well. So as far as our K-12 mission, it is to create innovative resources and deliver transformative trainings that empower educators to build young people's science skills through nature, citizen science, and inquiry. And we are going to talk about all of those tonight. So how do we reach our mission? And we reach it really through a 2-pronged approach. We provide resources. If you've been to our website, we have a lot of free activities. There's everything from a one activity that you can do with your class all the way to lesson plans to even a full curriculum that is downloadable and free for your use. And then we also have also paid kits, which this particular webinar is covering. There is a kit that you can purchase that goes along with this curriculum. And then we also do educator training, and we do that both online and in person. And of course, with the pandemic, that's mostly been online, but we are super excited to host a couple of in-person workshops this summer. And we'll share more at the end of the presentation about one that still has space left, and we would love for you all to attend. It is a workshop that's specific to this curriculum, this this K through 5 curriculum that we'll talk about. And excited to see that we already have somebody who's going to be there. That's great. So part of how we also meet our mission is kind of this approach where the first step is really connecting kids and students to nature. And then we love for them to get involved in citizen science and start collecting, making observations, collecting data. And we're going to talk extensively about citizen science tonight. And then go all the way to inquiry, where they're asking their own questions and they're answering their own questions. So that's kind of how we see our different resources and curriculum that we do provide for you. So this picture, we're going to talk about citizen scientists tonight, and this picture is kind of a classic science activity, especially for the younger students. And it's, called Draw a Scientist. What do you imagine a scientist to look like? And almost always these students, and hopefully this is changing, but a lot of times it's a male, he's white, he's in a lab, he has beakers with funny chemicals, exploding, crazy hair, in this case, a fun mustache. And we're trying to help expand that. So where we want them to go is to imagine seeing these as scientists. So adults still, but there's a woman, they're outside, they're doing things different than they're not just in a lab coat in the lab. And ideally I am really sorry about that. So ideally, we want them to see themselves as scientists. And this is really where the idea of citizen science comes in, is helping those students begin to identify as scientists, that we all have scientific abilities and that anybody really can be a scientist. So in the chat, I would love for anyone and everyone just to put in a definition of what they think citizen science entails, how they think about citizen science, how maybe you would explain it to a K through 5th grader. Observing and recording what you see in nature, everyday people contributing data to science, someone engaged in science research, yes. Everyday people who observe and gather data. Oh, working as a partner for a scientist. These are great. Counting birds and uploading to eBird. Yes, that's a very specific citizen science. We, of course, like that one especially. A person who observes, reports, and shares information to contribute to greater learning. Oh, I really like that. The idea that you're contributing to something larger, to something bigger than ourselves. Citizen science is anyone who can help contribute to scientific studies. Yes, these are all really great. So citizen science is exactly that. It's regular people making observations, collecting data, and then providing that to the scientists, usually uploading it into a database. And then scientists are able to look through that data and use it in scientific analysis. So I think someone said this exactly, projects in which volunteers partner with scientists to answer real world questions. And it's really great because your students can do this. We have kindergartners who are helping with citizen science, and they are absolutely capable, and their data really does make a difference for these big research projects that are going on at a global scale that these scientists are looking at. And one of the great things about citizen science also is that it really opens doors up to questions and answering those questions that we couldn't do previously. Without all of this technology, without all of these different people contributing their data, we wouldn't know what was going on at a global scale. We probably wouldn't even know what was going on at a national scale. So a very great resource and tool, not only for the students who get to practice real science, but also for the scientists themselves. So here at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, we have several different ones, and you can see those all listed there at the bottom. And of course, they are mostly focused on identifying and observing birds. Collect the data, you put it into the database, and we'll talk about how you do that with eBird specifically. But all of these have a different interface as far as uploading your data. But one thing that's really nice about the Cornell Lab, if you do decide to participate in more than one citizen science project with us, you only need one account. You don't need to have a different account for each one. And in fact, our best practice is for you just to have one account. And then the other really nice thing is that you can retrieve and view the data online. So for example, with eBird, not only can you see your submission, which we'll talk about that a little bit later as well, but you can see how many species you've identified, how many times you've completed a checklist, and then you can go look at the data that everybody has contributed. And that could be on a state level, that can be on a county level, it depends. But eBird has some really great graphing and data analysis tools as well. That's great. So yes, Christy's sharing that her kindergarten class participates in Project Feeder Watch and Journey North, which is wonderful. And the Great Backyard Bird Count. And eBird, wonderful. So happy to have you all with us. So there's several people who probably already know what this is, but in the chat, just put your best guess as to what this image is showing. We have migration, light pollution, bird migrations, eBird participants, data points from eBird, locations of birds. Those are all really great guesses. What I love about this map is you can very obviously see the outlines of the different continents. You can see, obviously, the United States is quite lit up, but you'll notice that there's some pretty striking lines out in the oceans. And so it is, in fact, eBird submissions. And the great thing about this is literally any people everywhere, any time of the day, any place that they happen to be at can report their observations. And citizen science, we focus on birds here at the Cornell Lab, but citizen science is very broad. So you can help with medical projects, you can help with, anything from microscopic to the universe. So there's so many different citizen science projects that you could participate in. And pretty much anybody can find something that they find interesting. So this is eBird submissions, and these stats, this over 1 billion observations submitted. So this is data from our latest report, which was April of 2022. Every country in the world is represented, which really is amazing. And very thankful for all these wonderful people helping us. And citizen science is really great, not only for the students, but also the educators. Some of my favorite parts of citizen science is that it is real world. These students get to contribute data to real scientific research. And it's often motivating for these students when they know that their data is actually going to be used, that it's not just going to sit on a dusty shelf somewhere. And it sparks kids' curiosity. They may be out observing, how many different species they see on their walk, but that gets them thinking. It really helps them start that inquiry process of asking questions and answering them. And then really connecting the students to their local environment. We know that when we care about the environment and know our environment, we're more likely to be protective of it. And so when they're really getting to experience their local environment, I think it's a great opportunity for them. And of course, it meets science and learning standards, and it's a nice low-cost year-round activity. And there's no place that doesn't have birds. You know, in the winter in the north, there might not be insects, but there's always going to be birds around. And so even in, you know, the densest urban area to the most remote place. So it's a great way to connect kids. And so here I really am talking more about eBird and participating in that particular citizen science, or Project Feeder Watch or Nest Watch, any of those. So the first thing I'm going to do is really talk about the tools that that are used in this curriculum. And then we're going to dive into the curriculum itself. So eBird is a citizen science project where every bird counts. No matter where you're at or what bird it is, it can be the most common bird, such as an American robin, to one of your lifers. So our colleague Kelly got to see a harlequin duck this past weekend when she was participating in the big bird count, and that was a lifer for her. So it's just a great opportunity to really pay attention to the birds that are around you. And eBird has some different tabs there at the top. The submit one really is when you're going to submit your checklist, and we're going to walk through that, because when you're working through with the K-5 students, there is a mobile app, but with your K-5 students, we really are recommending that you use paper tally sheets or checklists, and that then you come back and as a class, you submit your data and do that via the web. So this submit observations, when you're out doing an eBird count, again, this is where the curriculum really accumulates, is doing an eBird count. You need to know your location, so you put in a specific location. And then the date and effort is really the second thing. And if you're using the mobile app, that's going to keep track of it. But if you're not going to use the mobile app, or when you're entering it, you put the date and then the observation type. And so this could be traveling or stationary. So have you gone out on a hike? How many miles did you go, or how many kilometers? And how long were you out there? And then if it's stationary, again, what's your location with how long you were observing birds? And then the other thing that's included in that one is incidental or complete. And one thing that I was confused about when I first started using eBird was this idea of a complete checklist. I was only using the mobile app, and I didn't realize that a complete checklist simply means that I have listed all the birds that I could identify either by sight or by ear, and I've reported all of them. It doesn't mean that you have to be able to identify every single bird that you saw. It just means the ones you were able to identify, you included those on the list. An incidental list would be more something where, like I said, with Kelly, she saw a life bird, the harlequin duck, and she only entered that one. And so we know then that this is kind of a special reporting. This wasn't something where we looked at all the birds that were around us. And the best practice is really to always do a complete checklist if you can. And then you put in how many species, or how many of each of the different species you saw during that time. And the nice thing about eBird, because it is a huge data set, it actually lists these in the order that are most likely. So you'll be able to kind of verify your sightings. So with the mobile app, this is the start screen for it. It actually gives you the start time. It will record your track if you are going to be walking. And you just hit start checklist. And again, based on your location, you will see, when you start typing, you will see the most common birds. The other thing, with this is just that the eBird database has checks in it for data quality, for quality control. So say you're out birding with your kindergartners or just by yourself, and you put in that you saw 20 peregrine falcons, and it's going to flag it. So because we have expert reviewers who are looking at the data, there's also these flags within the database, and it's going to say like, oh, really? You saw 20 peregrine falcons. It's going to flag it. And you realize, oh yeah, I really only meant 2. Just my fingers, added that extra 0. So you don't need to worry so much about your data quality because there are some checks in there. There's some nice checks and balances. And just remember that all of this is helpful and useful to the scientists. And that, again, kindergartners can count, and it's a great way to engage them in science. So oftentimes eBird can be a little bit overwhelming. And so we highly recommend, both in the curriculum or just for yourself, if you're going to use it in the classroom, for you to take our eBird Essentials class. And Jen's going to put a link to that course. It's a free class. It takes about 3 hours, but it's going to walk you through really everything there is to know about eBird. And it really does help with your comfort level. It's really going to give you some good insights to how to use eBird, again, how that quality control is in place. And I think the other really nice thing about this is it has a lot of videos. And so it really is a great way to learn about eBird in a real hands-on way. We don't have to write it all out. The other nice thing with the eBird Essentials is we do have there's some specific spots in there where it talks directly to you as educators, and there is a resource you can download within that course. And again, it is free. It's through our Bird Academy, part of the Cornell Lab. Again, you only need 1 account with us. So once you've signed up for that, you can sign up for anything else that you want. It'll be the same login. So let's say you're actually a beginning birder and you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know how to identify birds, and definitely your students are going to need help. So the second tool we're going to introduce you to is the Merlin Bird ID app. And this, again, is a free ID or a free app, and you can download it from your app store, again, using the exact same login that you use for everything else. And it's really nice because it's intuitive. It asks 5 basic questions, and 2 of those questions are the date and the location, which your phone already knows. So you don't even have to answer those 2 questions. You would hit the Start Bird ID, but I wanted to point out that the newest version of Merlin has both photo ID and sound ID, and those have both been used with quite a bit success in the recent, really recent past, because sound ID was just brought on maybe a year ago at the most. So do explore both of those, but when you're out birding to do bird identification, usually I start with the Start Bird ID. And it's going to then ask you a few questions. What size is the bird? What are the 3 main colors? And what's the bird doing? And we are going to do a little activity with this later on, so I'm not gonna belabor those. But the really nice thing about this is that, again, eBird is the data that's behind this app. So it really is based on millions, and now at this point, 1 billion different sightings within that people have submitted through eBird. So it gives you a list of only somewhere between 5 and 10 birds that are likely to be in your area at this time. And if you aren't seeing your bird, you can always go back and change some of your answers to see if you can actually identify the bird. So Merlin is definitely a great tool to use, even if you bird all the time. Sometimes something just doesn't look right, or we need help with something. So once you identify your bird, it's going to give you these different pictures. You'll have a range map. There'll be different types of calls that you can listen to. And the other thing I like about Merlin is that it not only shows you this, for example, is a male wood duck, but it'll show you the female, because of course there are lots of sexual dimorphism within birds. It will also show you immatures, which depending on the species may look different. So all of that's really helpful when you're doing this. And probably your K-2 students may not use it, but if you have it available, there is the possibility of using it with your 3-5s for sure. And I mean, all the students know technology probably better than all of us, so they would probably pick it up very quickly. However, if you don't have mobile devices and you don't take them out with you, or you want your students to learn more about it even within class, there is a web-based version. So we will go through that. I'll show you that again later in the presentation. So we are going to dive into the actual curriculum right now. So the K-2 is called Building Literacy Through Nature, and this curriculum really uses some picture books to talk through bird identification, habitat, and then at the end they do get to you become a citizen science and actually contribute data. And then the 3-5 is Discover Schoolyard Birds. Again, similar content, but obviously at a higher level. And it really meets next generation science standards and the Common Core standards as well. So when we teach bird ID, and this is true across all of the curriculum, K-12, we use 4 different types of identifiers or clues to identification, and we will go through this curriculum steps through each of those. And we start out really with what is a bird, because of course there's some unique characteristics about birds. So this poster comes with the curriculum, and this first lesson really goes over what is bird and those 4 clues. Part of the curriculum, but these are also available to anyone, and I'll ask Jen to share the Inside Birding playlist from YouTube. Cornell has put out Inside Birding videos, and in the K-2 curriculum, they're really a teacher resource. And again, it follows those 4 clues. And then in the 3-5, the videos are used, but they're in much smaller and digestible packs for the 3-5. They don't watch the whole video because some of them are rather, they're for adult learners as well. So they might be a little above the 3-5 grade level. But they are a great resource, and hopefully you'll be able to use those. So the very first lesson is what is a bird, and again, across both curriculums. So you'll see on the slides, you're going to notice that there are K-2 and 3-5. and that indicates if it's in both the curriculum or only one. So this lesson really assesses your student knowledge. It introduces birds and what makes them special. You'll get to meet 4 common birds. And again, if you have the kit, they're going to be life size. So you'll utilize that idea of size and shape. In 3.5, there is a activity on feather structure, and then you introduce citizen science, what it is to the students. So we're going to look at an activity, and this activity is in both of them. This is a true-false game, and where the students get up out of their seats and you'd read off these statements, and they would either go to the side that is true or false, depending on what they think. So we're going to just do a couple of practice ones with you all. So in the chat, I want you to say if you think it's true or false. And we will start with number 1. Birds are the only living animals that have feathers. True or false? True, that's right. And the key there is living animals, because we now know that dinosaurs had some feathers as well, and that birds are evolved from them. So it is important to make sure you read these as exactly as they're stated. How about number 7? All birds lay eggs. True or false? True. Okay, so you will always have a student who says false because the male birds don't lay eggs, only the females lay eggs. So you can do with that what you want as far as all birds lay eggs. And then how about number 10? Male and female birds of some species look different. True or false? Yes. Definitely true. We know that, the northern cardinal is always the one that first comes to mind for me, the bright red male and the more drab colored female. And, there's lots you can do with this as far as giving them more facts and figures, especially at this young age. A lot of them love to know these different facts. It's a fun thing for them. So, in the 3.5, they are also going to look at feathers, because obviously feathers are a unique characteristic of birds. And in the 3.5, there are feathers in the kit they will examine. They'll describe them, they'll draw them, they'll write down what they observe. And then the other difference between the K2 and the 3.5 is the K2 again has those trade books that you're reading to the students, whereas the 3.5, you have teaching slides to go along with the curriculum. And so you would do some teaching from those slides, and that's where they would learn about structure and function. This idea, that the wing feathers kind of zip together to give them lift. And then once they've learned a little bit more, the last part of this activity is filling out the statement, this is and giving the name of the type of feather and their evidence. So this idea that they're doing the critical thinking, that they're looking at what they've learned and then making claims from the evidence that they see. And this particular activity is based upon a interactive that the Bird Academy has put out. It's all about feathers. And again, they'll learn about the tail feathers and how those are used in steering, and the wing feathers that provide lift. They'll learn that the semi-plume and the down are really feathers that help the bird stay warm. And then that those contour feathers are ones that we all get to see that are either brightly colored to attract a mate, or, helping camouflage the bird. So we're going to move on to lesson 2, which is size and shape. And again, both of these go through. And oftentimes people wonder about size and shape because we often think of color with birds. But expert birders find that really looking at the size and shape can help narrow down what the bird might be so you can actually identify it. So in this lesson, they're going to compare the different life-size birds, and we do use the same as the Merlin Bird ID app, so that it starts with the sparrow and then goes to an American robin, goes to an American crow, and then is it as big as a Canada goose? And of course, you can pick things in between there. And then they'll also learn to see shape to determine the bird group. So looking at silhouettes and how they can use that to identify bird groups. And within the curriculum, there are a resource that has these different silhouettes on it. And so we'll just practice ourselves here. In the chat again, if you want to just put in what you think number 1, what bird group number 1 is. And maybe why. Why do you think that? Yes, definitely a woodpecker clinging to a tree, the beak shape, the behavior. You can see that tail is against the tree. So yes, definitely a woodpecker. What about number 2? And again, why you think that? Right, an owl. So the great horned owl with the tufts. Yep, shape, posture, those are great. So again, we're kind of getting into, we really do know more than what we think, and your students will too. Yes, it's a great shape. The owl is such a classic shape where it has the much bigger head, the body that's kind of triangular. And let's do one more. How about number 3? And again, why you think. Yeah, vulture, hawks, raptors, soaring fingers in the wings, the wingspan. Yeah, and I think just even that idea of the stance, like this, that we know it's flying, the wingspan, the tail shape. Yes, all of those are good observations that will help you identify what the bird is. And we're going to take it just a step further. So now we've added in a bit of habitat and behavior. And so let's look at this. Oops. Let's look at this bird here in the very center that's sitting on the wire. And can you make a guess again in the chat as to what the bird is and why? What's the clues? We're seeing mourning doves. Kestrel, it's perched upright. Mourning dove, an ice cream cone shape. The pointy tail, yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. So it is a mourning dove. It could be it could also, so it's in the dove family, but it is a mourning dove. And yes, it has that very classic shape where it has the little tiny head, the bigger cone-shaped body, and that long pointy tail. What about this bird here, the big bird down by the tree? A crane, a great blue heron. I mean, you guys don't know, you know more than just the bird group. You know exactly what the species is, which is great. And again, those, yeah, the legs, you can tell that it's a wading bird. The beak is very pointed for spearing, that long neck, and also just that it's by the water. So even before we've learned anything about habitat, or your students have, there's going to be things about the bird shape even that's going to help them know what bird group they're looking at. Okay, so lesson 3 is really about color pattern. And so again, we started out with size and shape really, and then we go to color. And this is done differently between the two curricula. So in the 3-5, we use the bird body bingo, which they get a blank bird and it won't have all the different arrows to it. And they'll color in a different part of that bird. And then you as the teacher would call out like red wing or black tail. And we're using that to help them not only to really start looking for field markings and learning the parts of the bird itself. In the K2 curriculum, you use shapes and just identify, they cut out some different shapes and create a bird from those shapes, and then identify those different bird parts like the wing and the head and the beak and things like that. They'll both be working on their focus birds in this lesson, and they'll also get to do a practice walk. So while you're going through this curriculum, we really do build up to that final walk where they actually contribute data. So we are going to do a little bit of our own identification and looking at field marks. So I'm going to play a video for you, and I want you to pay close attention to the field marks, to the colors, to that shape, to the size. I'm going to play it one more time. Maybe. Think about the different parts of the bird, where the different colors are. Okay. And now I'm going to leave that up, and this website that I'm going to now is the Merlin Bird ID on the internet. So you can use this, and I'm going to put in Ithaca, New York. So for these, you do have to put in the location and the date that you saw the bird. And then you're going to pick what size the bird was. So in the chat, maybe you can tell me what size you think it is. Is it a sparrow size, between a sparrow and a robin, robin, between a robin and a crow? And you know, this one's a little bit harder because of the, okay, we're getting robins. Anybody else want to chime in? Between a robin and a crow? Okay, so we're gonna say we have more robin, between a robin and a crow, so we're gonna say that. And next, and then put in the top 3 colors that you see on this bird. Brown, gray, and black, gray, white, black, gray, black, beige. Okay, so we're gonna pick black, gray, and white. And I'm gonna hit next. And then you will say what the bird's doing. And of course, this one is in the trees and bushes. So once you do that, it creates a list of birds, and you can compare that to what you saw or what you're looking at right now. And this, comes up with the red-bellied woodpecker. We know it doesn't have a red head, so we can go move beyond that. Here, again, the black, it's much more prominent than what's on the bird that we're seeing. Again, the yellow-bellied sapsucker, too much black on it. Belted kingfisher. The blue jay, much too bright for us. An eastern kingbird. Northern flicker, that's, we're getting there. Definitely not a merlin. Oh, there we go. It's a mourning dove. We can see the black spots. So here you'll get to see these pictures. You can again see it in flight. Here's a juvenile. So again, if this was a younger bird, you might be looking at that. This mourning doves, there is no difference between the male and females, but you can also explore different things like the sound. Very classic mourning dove sound. And then if you want to explore it more even, you can go to details. And this takes you to the All About Birds website. And here there's ID information, there's sounds. You can go to a range map and just make sure that you're confident in your identification, and then you just say, yes, this is my bird. So great job, everyone. And yes, kids often think they sound like owls. It's kind of it really is a mournful sound. Okay, so we paid attention to those field marks. And now we're going to, once they've kind of learned about those field marks, thinking about the color and pattern, the size and shape, they'll start learning about their focus birds. And how you're going to find your focus birds is really using that Merlin Bird ID app. And so this one, you do need to actually be on the app. Open it, explore. You will open the app and you'll say explore birds, which was down at the very bottom of that menu. And you're going to want to hit this slider. It's up here in the right-hand corner. And that's going to let you set the seasonal and local settings. So say you're planning for this unit in December, but you're not going to actually do it until March or April. You can change the date so that you can find the birds. And then you would, depending on the grade level and your students, you might pick the top 10 birds, and have them in groups, or maybe you're going to have your students, each one of them become an expert in the bird. And so each student would have a different focus bird. And in the curriculum, there is a specific sheet. What we're showing here are just blank pieces of paper where they, again, draw the bird. It's really important to tell them that they're creating a scientific drawing. So again, they're marking those field marks. They're paying attention to the beak shape. They're paying attention to the feet. And if you have time, going to the All About Birds website and listen to the sounds and adding some of those natural history notes on the back, so that, again, they really become experts in the bird that is their focus bird. And you might hang them up around your classroom or make a field guide. And once you've done that, we go into habitat and behavior for identifying birds. Birds are usually well adapted to their habitats. They've evolved to live in that habitat. And these adaptations can be physiological, structural, or behavioral. And so you're looking at these different clues to help you identify birds. So we're going to do a quick pop quiz. Every student's dreaded time in class, but looking at this bird that's in the center of the picture, which habitat would you pick? The left, the right, neither, or both? The pond? Yep, the right, yes. And so those long legs, that long bill, those wings are pretty big, so they're probably not going to be flying in the forest. It needs fish, right? That beak shows you that it's going to spear those fish. Okay, how about this one? This is a ruddy turnstone. And which habitat do you think it would be? The right. Yes, right, the camouflage. That's right. It's going to blend in with those rocks really well. And then you can kind of see the legs that are, you know, it's not a songbird or a bird that perches. It has longer legs than that, but it's also not a great blue heron either with those extra long legs. And then what about the rock pigeon? Would you see them more likely in the left, the right, or neither? We have a left, we have neither, city. And yes, is this activity different for K2? Absolutely, we're gonna talk about that in just a minute. Neither. Okay, so this rock pigeons actually evolved in around cliffs. So it is the left picture, but because we as humans made cities and these great big tall skyscrapers, they've adapted really well to city life. So you would see them in the cliffs, but they also, of course, are in cities. So for the K2, that was the 3-5. And again, there's teaching slides to go over habitat and behavior. In the K2, we have what makes the habitat, and we again use the On Duck Pond is the book that you read for habitat to learn about habitat. And then they get to create a habitat mural. So kind of like the bottom picture there, they will all together create a habitat mural, and then talk about how birds use habitat. And then the final activity in this lesson for K2 is moving like a bird. And so you might have your students soar like a hawk or do a pigeon strut. So there's lots of different options for students to get up and act like a bird. And yes, they do have a lot of fun acting like birds. And then the final lesson for both is becoming a citizen science. So throughout the curriculum, there are practice walks. It's not like you do all of this stuff in the classroom and then just go out on the last lesson. We do encourage you to go out throughout the curriculum. And they get to put their ID skills to use. They contribute to eBird. The live submission map is really fun. I believe Kathy Wrigling shared this story, which she's on tonight, that she did the Great Backyard Bird Count with some students. And when she showed them the live submission map and hit submit as a group, the whole class cheered. So it really is a fun thing for them to do and empowering for them to see that they actually contributed to science. And then you can always access the eBird database, look at graphs and maps and some other things there as well. And how this really connects back. So since 1970, we've actually lost 2.9 billion birds in North America. And we know that because of citizen science. So the Christmas bird count has been going on for quite some time, and they used that data. And then when eBird came on in the early 2000s, they used some of that data to really show that birds are in decline. But there is hope, because knowing these numbers, there have been some great conservation efforts, such as banning DDT so that the raptors have come back. We all know the story of the bald eagle. Waterfowl have actually increased because, again, these conservation efforts to actually keep their habitat intact. So this study was done, part of the scientists who did this were Cornell ornithologists, but also just that they were using that eBird data. And with this particular study, they also came up with 7 simple actions to help birds. And some of these are not going to be applicable to your students, but this is something that, you know, if they have interest, that you could also introduce to them to this. And there is one, though, that they are already doing, and that's the doing citizen science. So it really is paying attention to what's in your local environment, counting it, and then sharing it for other people to use. And the great thing about it is if you wanted, your students could even, you know, look at that same data and do their own study, especially 5th graders. You know, they would know how to graph and look at some of that. So it is a very powerful tool for people. And then we do have free sample lessons. So before if you don't want to commit to a kit yet, feel free to download a lesson and see exactly how it's set up and what the different, you know, how we kind of present it. So it's lesson 4 in the K through 2 and lesson 3 in 3-5. And Jen just shared a link for that in the chat. And then this is the opportunity that I wanted to tell everyone about. If you want to learn more, we still have some spaces left in our workshop in St. Louis. The QR code is, you can scan that, and then Jen just shared the link in the chat as well. And there is a short application. It's due by the 22nd of this month. One thing to note is that if we do have more applicants than what we can handle, we will use those applications to make sure people are a good fit. So do give us enough information to really assess whether it's going to be a good fit or not. So we would love to see you there. We have time for a few questions, and I can either go to, so if you need a contact hour, a completion letter, please email us at k12lab@cornell.edu, and we will send that to you that you did attend. But if anybody has questions, please put those in the chat. Yes, Julie, we will be emailing everyone the links from the chat, and there will also be a link to the recording so that if anyone wants to go back and look at anything, they can. Oh yes, and Jen is just letting you know, you can also register for our annual retreat. The scholarship applications that deadline has passed, but you can also just pay for it outright and attend that one as well. We have a couple of questions about binoculars. Jen, would you mind unmuting? And the question is funding for binoculars, I believe.
Yeah, several years ago, we had a partnership with Celestron, a binocular company. Unfortunately, they have not offered that binocular giveaway for a number of years. I would recommend maybe doing like a donor's choose if you want a classroom set of binoculars, because we do not have a good source for free binoculars at this moment.
And we did have somebody share with us in another webinar or workshop that they had asked their state Fish and Wildlife Service and were able to get some through that agency.
Yeah, I think it was they could borrow them from their state local agency, and that might work for people as well.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a question about what binoculars we would recommend for kids. I'm going to let you take that one too, Jen.
Okay, the Celestron Nature DX were the ones that we were giving away. I like them because the ocular distance is small, so it's good for kids' eyes. I believe those run about $120 to $150 a pair, so they're not inexpensive, but it is one of those situations where you get what you pay for, and they hold up pretty well, and they're pretty water resistant and that sort of thing.
And we have some more in the chat. Some town libraries have them to borrow. And local bird organizations also might be able to borrow binoculars from also.
Yeah, especially for little kids, you want to be sure that the interocular distance is small enough such that they can bend down close enough for the kid's eyes. I think that's one of the problems with borrowing or asking for donations of old used binoculars is some of those massive heavy binoculars from 10, 15, 20 years ago just don't bend down to the degree that you need them for a 5 or 6 or 7 year old's eyes.